good stuff. Well, folks, thanks so much for joining us today on a webinar discussing BVLOS and waiver for DFR. But just thanks again for joining us. I'd love to introduce myself. My name is Joe Karr, Strategic Partnership Manager here at DroneSense. Real excited to be here, but the beauty of DroneSense is actually everyone that works here is a subject matter expert across the board, and one of that is the expert of BVLOS waivers, all of it. DFR, we've got Brandon Karr here. Brandon, will you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, pleasure, Joe. And thanks everybody for taking the time to join out of your day. Greatly appreciate it. My name is Brandon Karr. I'm the solutions engineer here at DroneSense, former law enforcement officer for Pearland Police Department. Started the drone program down here in the South Houston region, built it into every aspect of law enforcement. We started out with patrol, grew it into crash crime scene reconstruction, moved that into undercover operations, SWAT operations, and then finally we had drone as first responder as well. What was awesome about that process is we were able to acquire the very first fully beyond visual line of sight drone as first responder authorization in the United States, meaning we had no RPICs on rooftop, no visual observers. We are using technology to scan the airspace, and we'll talk a little bit deeper into that program here in a little bit. But now I get the fantastic opportunity to try to spread that knowledge and spread that capability across everywhere for anybody looking to start a drone as first responder program. So it's a lot of fun.
Awesome, good stuff. Well, let's get started here. Going to be jumping into our slide deck at the moment. So again, how to obtain a BVLOS waiver for DFR, key requirements and process. Let's go ahead and move into an agenda for today's discussion. So we're going to be walking over a couple key points. First, understanding what BVLOS and DFR is, key requirements for BVLOS waiver, step-by-step process, tips for a successful waiver, and then we'll open up a Q&A and kind of dive in. So to the next, we're going to be going over understanding beyond visual line of sight and DFR. Start by going right into BVLOS and dive in. Brandon Karr, I want to hand that over to you.
Yeah. So whenever you're flying drone as first responder, we'll start out with what is drone as first responder, right? And why do you need a BVLOS authorization to have that? So the drone as first responder deploys the drones to emergencies before human responders, providing rapid assessment and real-time data to improve response times and safety. So generally speaking, think of this as the 911 call drops, right? Somebody calls in, they say, hey, I have an issue. If it meets the requirements for drone as first responder operations in accordance with your departmental policy, a pre-positioned drone for either from a traditional DFR perspective with the pilot on the rooftop or a fully beyond visual line of perspective utilizing a dock, autonomously launches and flies to the scene, providing real-time situation awareness to first responders before they ever get there. Generally speaking, those drones are able to arrive on scene and provide that information anywhere from 1 to 4 minutes before responding officers are able to get there. So it's great for resource allocation if you wanted to find out, hey, is that vehicle still in the roadway, or does that individual have a gun, or are they unarmed? Is the information bad? That drone can provide not only resource allocation but also for tactics, de-escalation, and things of that nature. So it's a really great force multiplier for that, especially in the day of age where people are struggling to find personnel and fill those job roles, both from a police perspective and from a fire perspective. To be able to do that, you have to be able to fly beyond visual line of sight, right? So we all know that Part 107 is fairly limited in how far you can fly that aircraft to make sure that the remote pilot in command has the ability to maintain visual line of sight at all times. And by enabling beyond visual line of sight, it allows you to be able to fly further than what you legally can do under Part 107 by leveraging a BVLOS waiver. So you can use this for multiple different types of events like search and rescue, disaster response, critical emergency response, welfare concerns, and things of that nature where the person may be in crisis. So there's a lot of really good applications for utilizing drone as first responder and leveraging the FAA authorization with beyond visual line of sight.
Excellent. Thanks for diving into that. Now, with beyond visual line of sight, there comes the next term that's been bounced around, and that is drone as first responder, DFR. And if you haven't heard about this, this is a great moment for us all to discuss. So, Brandon, can you tell us more about DFR?
Yeah, so DFR started back in 2018 with Chula Vista, California. They were the very first ones. They got into a special program with the FAA to be able to do beyond visual line of sight ahead from everybody else, and they were the godfathers. There's been some fantastic people that have come out of there that have gone into the private sector since then that are helping spread the word as well. But they started it out, and to date, I believe they cleared 19,000 flights, if memory serves, on drone
Wow.
as first responder operations now. So like that's a ton of operations, a ton of flights. And the value is there. So what's great about it, just like I was mentioning a little bit earlier on the resource application, generally speaking, with DFR programs all over the country, you're able to clear a quarter of your call for service with a drone alone, never having to have a first responder arrive on scene. So think about all of those call for services, suspicious vehicles, person in distress, verbal disturbance, like all of that, even a crash, right, without injuries. There's a lot of calls that you can get out there and you never really need to have an officer there. The drone can clear that call for you. And so in the day and age where we have a shortened amount of personnel, where you have all of those calls holding, you can start clearing some of those with a drone and never have to worry about having an officer get there. In the day and age where police officers are under the microscope for de-escalation tactics and things of that nature, there is no better way to de-escalate a scene than never having to have an officer there, right? So it stops it at the front end, which is really great. Which really helps with liability. It really helps with keeping officers in service to going to more important calls and things of that nature. So it's really good to leverage that for that type of response. Um, Currently, there's around 40 plus agencies utilizing drone as first responder today. So it is still fairly new. There's multiple different ways that you can do these drone as first responder operations. A lot of them are doing 2 mile radiuses on their operational area per launch site. Some are doing up to 3 miles. So it just depends on the waiver, the environment, the safety case that you present to the FAA. What we're talking about here with manual or a semi-autonomous response, we talked a little bit earlier about having a dock automatically launch and go to that scene, right? Well, sometimes the call for service is not where the call for service initially dropped, right? Being a law enforcement officer, I can't tell you how many crashes I went to, and they're like, yeah, we're at this intersection. And when we get there, and there's nobody there because there are 3 intersections down the road. So utilizing DFR allows you to be able to see where they are, where they actually are, and help move those resources there to either get them out of the roadway or get them help faster than just getting an officer there and then starting to search. So it can be done both manually and semi-autonomously.
And so could you tell us a little bit more about manual compared to semi-autonomous response?
Yeah. So there's different tools that you can use for different type of situations, right? So in some instances, having an autonomous response is the way to go, right? Like if it's pretty far down range and you're not really good on dead reckoning on figuring out how to get to that area, then doing that autonomous response, go to that intersection, get there, is more efficient, more effective than a manual response. A manual response may come in handy where you don't really have a good location on where the call for service dropped. One of those would be like a suspicious vehicle in a subdivision, right? That vehicle more likely is not going to be just anchored down the whole time. They're going to be moving around. They're going to be driving, probably slow, which is why they got called in on. But you don't want to send it to where it was called in on because they're not there, right? So you're going to want to do a semi-autonomous response or a manual response to that so that you can start searching for that person, that missing person, that suspicious vehicle, or even that crash, right? So all of those allow you to be able to have a different tactic. Just an autonomous response isn't always the best solution because again, if that is a bad location as to where the call for service is, then you're going to miss it. So having the ability to transition from autonomous to manual or semi-autonomous really helps first responders be able to handle that scene effectively.
Man, Brandon, it sounds like you have a lot of experience in this, and you've been diving into this for some time. It's great to hear all this information. Now we have a little bit of an understanding of BVLOS and DFR. Let's start talking about some of the key requirements for a BVLOS waiver. We dive into that, Brandon. I'd say first point would be certificate of authorization.
Yeah, so there's the primary way that agencies are utilizing drone as first responder is through what's called public aircraft operations or Part 91 operations. By getting a certificate of authorization. There are some agencies that are exploring doing it under Part 107 with obstruction shielding, but that's still fairly new. Generally speaking, everybody is doing a public code. So under a public code, those can only be granted to government agencies that need to use drones as part of their regular functions for emergency responses. So there's going to be a list of type of government functions that you'll be able to fly for. You can fly for training and things of that nature as well, so that you can train properly under Part 91. But this is a completely separate type of a completely different set of regulations. So this is not Part 107. That's completely separate set. So you will need to be trained up on what Part 91 operations are. You will have to have self-certification processes and training and whatnot, and have all that logged for the FAA in the event that you get audited. But this is only specific to government agencies who have the ability to get this public COA. What's great about that is it is generally less restrictive than Part 107, which is where you have the ability to fly over people. You'll have the ability to fly beyond visual line of sight, and you don't have to meet categories 1, 2, or 3, which is really nice. But with that, in the famous words of Spider-Man, comes great responsibility, right? So under a public aircraft operations, there's a whole lot more liability to the agency because you are self-certifying your aircraft, you are self-certifying your pilots, you are self-certifying that your aircraft are airworthy. Right. So like there's a lot more that goes into that than what generally speaking typically goes into Part 107. But it does allow you to have greater flexibility in the regulations. So like, for example, with Pearland, we try to fly everything under Part 107, but in the event that the op becomes something that we cannot fly within the confines of Part 107, then we can transition that operation to Part 91. Once you go to 91, you can't go back for that flight. So it does allow us to have a little bit more flexibility. Public aircraft operations aren't for every agency. Not every agency needs that, but it is a good tool to have in the event that you need to be flexible. If you're looking at a drone as first responder deployment, then you will need a public aircraft operations COA to fly beyond visual line of sight.
Interesting. Sounds like there's so many different avenues to be taken here, and it sounds like there's a lot of information out there. I know you have spent so much time organizing, going through this, and building Paralens, and then doing everything you've done here as well. So it's there's a wealth of knowledge that needs to go into this, and it's incredible to tap in with you here.
Yeah.
Situation.
So under situation, sorry, I just noticed I made some edits to that bottom one, but it didn't look like those carried through. Under situation, doing an aerial search for a burglary in progress, assessing scenes for a large structure fire, looking for a missing person in a heavily forested area. These are great examples of some things that you can fly drone as first responder for, right? So like going back to resource allocation, situation awareness, especially on burglaries in progress, 9 times out of 10, by the time officers there, they gone. And so by flying a drone as first responder, you can get there much faster than officers can get there, and you can start to see people fleeing scenes and things of that nature. Prime example of that, I was just out in Arizona supporting an agency out there and training them on how to use DroneSense remote platform. And we flew for a trespass in progress. And before we were able to get fully on scene, one of the suspects was fleeing the scene already. And when we were arriving on scene, we were able to see that suspect fleeing officers while they were getting on scene, and the officers didn't have an eye on that at the time. So we were able to coordinate those ground personnel to that individual who was fleeing the scene, who ended up getting arrested. So really good application there, really easy win, great example of how using a drone for aerial search by getting there faster will help not only get officers there safer, but also help make sure that they can solve that incident. Assessing the scene for large structure fires, nothing can beat a drone on doing roof assessments for a large scale structure fire. Instead of putting an officer up there, or excuse me, a firefighter up there, say, yep, that structure fire is not good to walk on. Right, put a drone up and be able to see that so that we can do that safer for them as well. And then of course, looking for missing people in heavily forested areas, urban environments even as well. This allows you to be able to do that more efficiently than putting people on the ground in the woods, going through backyards, walking all over the place, right? A drone can do this much more faster, much more efficient, and it helps supplement those officers to have a safer experience. There we go. Thank you. Perfect.
Apologize. Now let me get this updated here.
Yep, not a problem. I appreciate you.
You got it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Looking good.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Just start screen sharing. It's not coming through for me yet.
We'll try one more time.
Yeah, so while we troubleshoot that, there are a lot of different ways that are out there to be able to do that. And again, the biggest one being de-escalation. So think about all these different type of deployments that you can fly for. It doesn't necessarily have to be for a structure fire or an accident with injuries. One of Chula Vista's greatest examples that I love to talk about, they got called out to an individual with a gun. And when the drone got on scene, sure enough, he got a gun. But they sit there and watched him for a little bit. And as they watched him, they ended up seeing that gun was actually a lighter, right? So instead of saying, hey, he's got a gun, like, officers are going to come out there heavy, right? Like, we don't want to get shot. We want to go home at the end of the day, just like everybody else. But we were able to see that he had a gun. Or excuse me, that he had a lighter. And so that allows us to completely de-escalate. We know that that's not a gun. We know that we're going to be going into a safe environment. And it allows us to be able to disregard other officers. It allows us to be able to change our tactics in response on how we are going to get there. Let's see. I can probably share screen, Joe, if you want to let me try.
Yeah, Zoom is just pausing it on me. I'm not sure if I asked it to do too many things. Apologize there.
Not a problem at all. Oh, there it goes. Of course, right when I click the button. There we are, and share. All right, so perfect. So those are just some of the situations that you can fly for. Thefts in progress was one that Paraland flies for quite a bit. Crashes with injuries. The one that they just flew right when we started this meeting was a crash with injuries, right? So it's a bunch of things to make sure that we can get people the help that they need as faster and more efficiently, but it's also a way for us to make sure our officers and other first responders are safe getting there. So what are some of the things that we can fly for, right? What are the flight conditions and requirements under a BVLOS waiver? Some of those would be, you have to make sure if you're flying under a traditional drone as first responder program, the RPIC or a visual observer must be able to deconflict the airspace up to 2 miles around the drone at any given time. So think about that as whenever you're going to stand up your DFR program on where those launch sites need to be. You can figure out what's the furthest that I can fly, and do I need to place for visual observers further downrange so I can get even further, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can skin that cat, but the requirement under the waiver is that a remote pilot in command or a visual observer, don't have to necessarily be co-located, must be able to see all of the operational environment around the drone up to 2 miles at any time. So if an aircraft did come in at an incursion height, they can deconflict that aircraft.
Nice.
Another one is the drone cannot fly over 400 feet AGL above ground level, which is a hard ceiling. So a lot of people are thinking, what if I get within 400 feet of a tower, then I can fly higher? That's not how it works. Not under DFR. It is a hard ceiling. Those within 400 feet of a structure does not apply for the drone flight or up to the predefined UAS facilities map grids. So for example, with my agency, we're in Class Bravo airspace up down to the surface over half my city, including all of our DFR operation areas. And we have a hard deck of the UAS facilities map grids of 200 feet. So for all of that area, we can only fly up to 200 feet for that. So it's not always just 400 feet. Sometimes if you're flying in controlled airspace, you may have a UAS facilities map grid that has a predetermined altitude at 400 feet, 300 feet, so on and so forth for your environment. And then finally, if you're flying fully beyond visual line of sight, like Paraland is, all operations must be performed within the limitations of the detect and avoid safety systems. So for our systems, right, our safety systems, our detect and avoid stuff doesn't have the ability to see fully at 2 miles by one node, but we do have the ability to mesh network those. And so long as we have the safety, detect and avoid safety systems meshed out, we can fly to the furthest extent of its limitations. However, if we don't have a detect and avoid solution in those areas, we cannot fly in those areas, right? Just like if the visual observer can't see that far, then we can't fly that far. So it's no different. But those are some of the flight limitations that we have flying fully beyond visual line of sight comparatively to doing the traditional drone as first responder operation.
And with saying that, now backing up to a conversation we had before, is that also this would be the moment from having manual DFR?
It is, yeah. It doesn't matter if it's autonomous or manual. For Pearland, with going fully beyond visual line of sight, they are still restricted to the height of the UAS facilities map grids. They're still restricted to the limitations and capabilities of the detect and avoid solutions, regardless of if you're in manual or if you're in autonomous mode.
Gotcha.
Yeah, great question. Shaver, I will answer your question here. So while we're talking about the differences between BVLOS and what's called TBVLOS, TBVLOS stands for Tactical Beyond Visual Line of Sight. So this is a little bit different. So now there is a coined term for drone first responder, BVLOS, and then there's Tactical Beyond Visual Line of Sight. First responder BVLOS operations allows you to fly up to 2 miles around up to 2 miles as long as you can visually deconflict the airspace with a visual observer. So regardless of where you place that, you could fly so long as the visual observer can deconflict 2 miles. And then you're limited to 400 feet or the height of the UAS facilities map grid. Under tactical beyond visual line of sight, that's extremely limited. Think of this as like a SWAT op with a barricaded subject, or a fire event where you just can't, or a hazmat event where you just can't have your head up because it's not safe, right? A prime example of that, and the one that I used in my con op when I presented it to the FAA, was we had a suspicious package event, and I was like, yeah, I cannot have my head above cover because if that suspicious packet blew up, I would die, and that's not very safe for aviation. So like that's a really good example of that. So under tactical beyond visual line of sight, you can only fly the drone up to 1,500 feet horizontally and 50 feet above a structure. And you are limited within that envelope, or you can fly that fully beyond visual line of sight, but you can only do it within those confines. So think of that as really small scale. Drone as first responder, beyond visual line of sight, large scale. So those are the primary differences. Tactical beyond visual line of sight is super easy to get. It's typically just a paragraph added to your CONOP when you get your jurisdictional or blanket COA, public COA. First responder BVLOS takes a little bit more paperwork, but they're both beyond visual line of sight. Just one is a little bit more limited in distance and height. Great question. Thank you, Shaver.
So we go to the next slide.
Yeah. So this is I forgot I was running the PowerPoint at that time. So this is what
Man, I gotta say, Brandon, when I see this, it's just like it brings me back to when I was first looking at these like nautical maps. It's like it's just chaos. But with all of this, with the BVLOS, with DFR, with the organization of all of it, I mean, it starts to just all make sense, right? And it now just reads like a sheet of music almost. But I was having that flashback moment. But yeah, continue on it.
Absolutely. So this is what Pearland's operational environment looks like. Currently, we have docks turned up online and functional at this launch site here and this launch site here. We have another dock installed here, but it's down. So right now that one's not flying, but each one of these rings is where a launch site will be. Currently, like I said, we have these two operational. We're about to install this one. So each one of these rings will be a launch site. We have a 1 mile ring and a 2 mile ring for the full operational border. And as you can see, they all overlap so that we can have cross operations in the event that one drone is tapped. We can launch another one to come and overwork that. The 200-foot grids, that's that 200-foot UAS facilities map grid for over half my city for the Class Bravo airspace to the surface. The heat map that you're seeing here are our call for services. Now, this map's a little bit dated now. The call for service heat map has changed a little bit. But as you can see, we designed these operations based off of our call for services. So this area was phase 1, this area was phase 2, and this area is phase 3. As you can see, there's not very many calls for services between 35 and 288. So this is last. If we continue to build out our DFR program and we can continue to see the value, this will be the last location because there's just not going to be as busy. But this is sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, how did you choose these sites? Like, how did you choose them or just to blanket it, right, and have like that Venn diagram of everything coverage? I mean, it's got to be a lot of thought in there.
Yeah, so for this one, we have crime analysts with the city of Pearland. And so I got with our
Hmm.
crime analyst and I said, hey, where are our call for service locations? Like, if you were to take a whole year, where are we going the most? And this is what they provided with me was this heat map, which is which is exactly what I needed here. So again, this is an outdoor mall area, high shopping area, so a high volume of crashes because there's a ton of people coming in and out of here. Also, a high call for service for thefts. This is a hospital district all the way down through here, as well as up here is another shopping center area. Over here is, you guessed it, a Walmart. So we all go there a lot. You can barely see it in here, but down here, this is also another Walmart. It's also a high call for service volume area. And this is a high crash area. There's also a shopping center down in Pearland Parkway. This is also the heat map has moved over to here now. But this is where there was a bunch of crashes back when I pulled this data. So I initially started my launch sites based off of the call for service volumes. I knew that the city was going to be investing a lot of money into our DFR program, and I wanted to make sure that we were going to be successful. So I started where we were going to get the most calls. And then the big diamond here, all of these launch sites that are going to be manned with a dock with no visual observers, are all piloted from our police department in the center of Pearland here. And we're 50 square miles wide.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go through the step-by-step process of achieving this.
Yeah. So what I did first is I know that we were going to need a certificate of authorization to fly beyond visual line of sight, right? And so what I started to do was thinking, all right, well, the current method is they have to have a visual observer and they have to be able to fly, within 2 to 3 miles of the visual observer at any time. I was like, well, I can't put visual observers on my rooftops because again, they would die. It was 100 degrees for almost an entire month. So if I put people on rooftops, that would not be very good. So I didn't want to use visual observers, so I went for fully beyond visual line of sight. So you'll need a certificate of authorization if you don't have one already. I have been hearing rumors that the FAA would prefer for you to have a fully beyond, or excuse me, a first responder BVLOS authorization before getting a fully beyond visual line of sight authorization. But again, I didn't go through that. It doesn't mean that you'll have the same experience, but I didn't have to do that. So I started to think, all right, well, if they're approving this, I just have to be better than a human, right? A human is the minimum standard there. So I started to started to look into different type of solutions and different type of safety systems that I knew the FAA would want to see in their safety and operational plans for our SOPs, and the concept of operation that I would send up to them. So we had a lot of discussions about how good of a human visual observer is. There was some disagreeing of opinions there for quite a while on how good a human actually is comparatively, but luckily there's some documented scientific studies that say that a human's good on based off of certain parameters and environments. So once I decided on a detect and avoid solution that I wanted to go with that was going to meet our needs, as well as was going to be better than a human, that was the system that we went with. And then I put all of that information into the ConOp. Some of the things that they would want to see, for example, on number 5 there, it says provide evidence demonstrating a safe BVLOS operation. We had to install those safety systems in Pearland, and it had to be running for a while so that we can give them a data set showing, hey, like this is working, it is effective, we are able to utilize this in a safe manner. And then on top of that, they also wanted to see a third-party test so that there wasn't a bias of the end user and the manufacturer to be able to see that. So the detect and avoid solution that I went with, they went through Virginia Tech to be able to get a third-party test done, and that was approved. From there, we type up the ConOp on, hey, this is where I want to fly. This is how I want to fly. These are the safety systems we have in place. These are the checklists we're using. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that ConOp. So think about this as, you're trying to sell this to a safety person. You want to try to get all of your I's dotted and all of your T's dotted, and you want to be as clear as possible as to what your operation is going to do and what it's going to look like. Like show them photos of where your drone's going to launch from. Show them photos of what your display looks like for your operations. Show them photos of what the detect and avoid solutions can see, or where your visual observers are going to place and what they can see, because it helps paint that picture to the safety guy that, hey, this could be done safely. And it's important to note that it's not very often that the safety reviewers have ever flown a drone. It's even less likely that they've flown it operationally. So you have to really explain it in a manner that they can understand it. And then finally, you submit that FAA request up for FAA review and approval, and then you'll receive and implement the approved BVLOS waiver down the road. You'll initially submit it. They will review it, and then they will come back with an RFI or a request for information for more information about where there might be some gaps in your waiver. So just make sure that you are ready for that. The more information, the better when it comes to giving that information out to them for their BVLOS authorization. For the traditional BVLOS authorizations, we're typically seeing a decent turnaround time on those, anywhere from 2 months up to 4 months. For the fully beyond visual line of sight, that's still a little bit of a painstaking process. Depending on the detect and avoid solutions you're wanting to run with, this could take anywhere from 6 months up to a year for the fully beyond visual line of sight authorizations today.
Brandon, would there be any tips for a successful waiver to dive in on this?
Yeah, just again, go through your waiver or your safety case, your concept of operations, and think about where are your holes, where are your gaps in safety. Redundancies are really good. You want to make sure that if you're flying beyond visual line of sight, ADS-B alone, generally speaking, is not going to be enough. You have to have something that can find what's called compliant and non-compliant aircraft. So ADS-B transponding and non-ADS-B transponding aircraft. So if you're going to be utilizing a detect and avoid solution, it has to find both of those. If you're going to use a first responder, if you're going to use a visual observer, you want to make sure that you have all your documentation in there about how you're going to train them for depth perception, for optical illusions at night. You want to make sure you have all of that information in there available for you as well. If you're wanting to use visual observers, or if you want to get a beyond visual line of sight authorization, whether it's through fully beyond visual line of sight or through a visual observer, first responder BVLOS, then there's also the form called the 7211 form that you'll need to download and get familiar with that form, because it's another form the FAA wants you to have when you submit your CONOP to them. So thanks, I appreciate you, Joe. So you want to make sure that you develop a comprehensive safety and operational plans to address all potential risks. When it comes to all potential risks, it's not just the airspace, but it's also how are you going to deconflict with hardware malfunctions, software malfunctions, how are you going to deal with microclimate weather and things of that nature. So really go through and think about all of the aspects of your operation that could cause hazards to your deployment. And then go in and do a detailed description of the aircraft and its capabilities. You know, if your aircraft can't fly faster than 20 miles an hour, let them know that. If your aircraft is going to be super fast, then let them know that. They're going to want to know that information because it plays a part into the safety of that system. You want to
Something that just when you said like the more information the better, right? Is like it's just such a thing, and a key point that I picked up from you is you know, human as baseline, and we have to think we are much more. So how much more we can even give out to the FAA to approve or go for this waiver, correct?
Correct, yeah. And so like you have to put good information in there, clear information in there. You know, it's not enough to just say, you know, yeah, we don't think that this will be a problem. You have to explain why you don't think that'll be a problem and what mitigations you went into place to come to that conclusion. So there are some templates that are out there for beyond visual line of sight that you can leverage for the first responder side of the house. There are some of our partners that are out there that do that, like Law Enforcement Drone Association, as well as drone responders have some documentation out there that can give you some good guidance as to some of the safety and hazards that you may experience going downrange for a fully beyond or for a first responder BVLOS request. The FAA also has some documentation that you can download to give you an idea on where you need to head to be able to get these authorizations. But the big thing in there is like those guides don't write the waiver for you. So you really have to think about, okay, this is something that they say may be a challenge. How am I going to mitigate that challenge to the best of my abilities and document that? Show pictures, paint the picture for the safety case and reviewer. Yeah. Again, robust risk mitigation strategies to handle those emergencies, demonstrate a strong training program. Again, under Part 107, you have your documentation, you have your certification showing that you're current on your license, but under public aircraft operations, you don't have that. So you want to make sure that you have the ability to demonstrate a strong training program, show a documented history of attendance of training and showing that you're flying beyond visual line of sight and showing that you're doing emergency procedures and showing that you know how to mitigate aircraft incursions safely and things of that nature. Showing data from past successful operations to build credibility is huge, right? If you got your 107 yesterday, the FAA is going to be cautious and just allowing you to go nuts.
What does that look like?
So one of the things that we do is I typically will pull the data out of DroneSense for the agencies that I'm working with on how often are they flying, how many incidents do they have. If they have a DFR program, give me how many flights that you've done, how many problems did you have. It's okay to tell the FAA you have problems because nothing makes you, if you have a perfect flight every single time, you're not an expert. It's when things go wrong that's what makes you an expert, because you learn how to troubleshoot, you learn how to react. Right? If it goes perfect every single time, that's not, you have no idea how to manage those emergencies. So document your failures, document your malfunctions, document your incursions and things of that nature and how you mitigated those. The FAA is going to want to hear that. So bad things are just as important as good things. But if you're not tracking all that information, I strongly advise you start. If you're wanting to build out a drone as first responder program, a successful one that can grow. Engage with FAA representatives early to guidance and feedback. One of the first things that I did when I started going into my BVLOS authorization is I called some of my friends in the FAA and I said, hey, I want to push the envelope a little bit. What do I need? Well, what do y'all think I need to have in there? What are some challenges I'm going to come across when I want to write this guy up? So if you have partners and friends in the FAA, I strongly advise you reach out to them. Some great experts in the field for inside the FAA. Michael Shea in the UAS Integrations Office is fantastic. Also, you can look up Steve Pansky as well. He's a fantastic wealth of information when it comes to public aircraft operations. So two people that I leverage often on what do you think about this? What do I need to have in there? What can I expect to have from a challenge perspective? And they're not going to do your job for you, but they can provide you with really great guidance and information about what you're trying.
Brandon, something you had told me before that always sticks out to me is like when you were getting your first DFR program started, it started from like, how much experience did you have?
Yeah.
And how much experience you have now? And like, what was it like? I mean, you were very new into this whole space, and then now you are you are the expert. Like, could you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so when it comes to drone or when it comes to just drone operations as a whole, like I came from an aviation background, right? So before I became a cop, I was a fixed wing pilot, single engine multi and instrument ratings, certified flight instructor for instrument. And so I came from an aviation background, but I had never touched a drone other than like Call of Duty, Battlefield, playing on the PlayStation there before 2017. And back in 2017, we had an autistic juvenile go missing, unfortunately, on Thanksgiving. And unfortunately, like most autistic juveniles who go missing, he found a pond and drowned. And I was able to see there was a proposal that got sent up, and I asked Chief if I could run with it. He said, absolutely, go nuts. And I did. And so that's how our program started. And then I just started flying a lot. I got into a bunch of different groups on Facebook. There were some local subject matter experts who I consider to be like the experts of experts, world-renowned guys that took me under their wing and mentored me to be able to have the expertise that I have today. And then it was just don't take no for an answer. You want to see me go nuts, tell me no. Like I will prove you wrong. And so that's what happened with me. Like I was like, hey, I want to start a drone program. I think we could have saved that kid's life. And they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. I was like, awesome. Can I have some money to like buy some drones? And like, absolutely not. And I was like, okay. So I started like figuring out where I could find money, and I got drones. And then I said, hey, can I fly for that? And they're like, that's not really a good idea. And I was like, I'll take the IA. And we went and flew it. And doing that not only built out some headache with me and my supervisors, but it did build trust with the drone program on what we could do and how we could enable officers to be more efficient and safer. And this is no different with the FAA. They used to have a slogan of, we're not happy till you're not happy, and we're an agency of no. So take the no and take the feedback that they give you on why not, and then fix it. That's what makes you the expert. Going out there and flying, and where it can't be done, figure out why it can't be done, and then figure out a solution to try to get around that. So I was very fortunate enough to have a very supportive police department, a very supportive city administration to allow me to be able to go and do a lot of stuff that a lot of people just don't have the opportunity to do for. So I've been very blessed to be able to do that. And then again, I've had the right people in my corners to enable me and my agency and my team to be able to be successful. And what's great about me coming to DroneSense is I get to leverage all of those same people that help me be successful along the way to help other agencies be successful. And that's what I'm all about. I'm not supposed to say this, but I could care less if you're a DroneSense customer or not. I want you to have a good drone program. If you use DroneSense, it's going to make it a whole lot better. But all I care about is making sure officers are safe so that they can go back home at the end of the day and keep everybody safe. Drone as first responder is the holy grail of being able to do that, because we can get officers to not ever go there. They can de-escalate the call for service. Instead of running priority 1 across the entire city, we can downgrade because that crash, nobody's hurt, it's off the roadway. Right. I can't tell you how many times I watched news articles about officers crashing into people or people crashing into officers. It's hard to watch when I know, hey, if we had a DFR program, that could have been avoided. Right.
Wow.
So just
Brandon, thank you. Like you have such passion on this too, and it's awesome. And yeah, like I hear it in you too. Like it's not sure we're here to talk about DroneSense, but this is a passion here. Like it really is. And I think a beauty of all of us working here at DroneSense too is knowing that we're doing something to get out there that actually makes a difference, that actually is doing something in this field. So amazing to hear.
Absolutely.
I did interrupt you, I think, on the last point of tips for a successful webinar there, emphasizing the benefits of BVLOS for emergency response and public safety. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, utilizing drone as first responder for public safety allows you to leverage it not just for law enforcement. I know that law enforcement is like by far and large the lion's share for DFR, but one of the things that Pearland did was we said, hey, we're not going to only fly for law enforcement stuff. We're also going to fly for fire stuff. We're going to fly for catastrophic event stuff. And what that allows you to do is not only branch off into different types of deployment opportunities, but it also allows you to leverage more opportunities for funding. Right. So like we can leverage the fire department's budget now to help fund the DFR program. We can leverage OEM's budget to fund the DFR program. And so like that helps get it, because we're not going to fly for just, violent subjects. We're also going to fly for crashes, right? Fire is going to go to that. We're going to fly for fire responses. Fire is going to go to that. So now we can start leveraging those catastrophic events, disaster responses. OEM is going to want us to fly for those. Well, you can help fund our budget. So don't only think about just law enforcement responses, because there's all kinds of stuff that you could fly for that covers all of public safety, search and rescue events, things of that nature. It doesn't have to be just law enforcement. And that'll really help not only give you more deployments, but it'll help you open up the budget strings a little bit more outside of the police department. Awesome. Can you play the video?
Good stuff. I know you spent some good time on this next video, and it's great. And so love to open it up to you.
Absolutely.
Located outside of Houston, Texas, Pearland is the first drone as first responder agency in the country to have a BVLOS waiver.
DFR has increased the efficiency and effectiveness of our overall public safety goals. Generally, we get calls someone's having a pretty bad day. So if they're already having a bad day, I want to be the best part of that day. It's knowing that somebody needed help and I was able to provide that.
The need to rethink law enforcement has become apparent. When every second counts, an innovative solution is needed. Public safety is constantly being redefined by technology. With the introduction of drones, agencies found a means to enhance their situational awareness without compromising the safety of their officers and civilians.
Drones are available almost 24/7 if we need them. The instances of the drone usage increased, then that changed my mind and got me thinking, hey, we're actually using these and they're working, helping us help the community. The biggest advantages that our DFR program brings to our agency and the public is that we
That
can
looks familiar.
real-time information and allocate resources before responders ever make it on scene. We can let them know what's going on, where it's happening, and what they're going to need to tackle the problem.
Pearland PD is embracing the future and shaping how DFR operations will look and operate in the near future by using technologies like the DJI dock, integrations with real-time crime centers, and various airspace detection systems.
We're showing that we're arriving on scene first about 55% of the time. So over half the time when a call comes out, our drone's going to get there first. We provide additional information and a different vantage point to the responding officers.
Meanwhile, over 200 miles away in the heart of Texas, San Antonio PD paves the way for the next generation of drone as first responder, as the largest metro city in the U.S. using this program.
Being able to save a life through this program, being a police officer is
Oops. I have a touch. I gotta get rid of this.
Located outside of Houston,
sent back to the officers, sent back to dispatch of the situation that's going on prior to the officer's arrival.
DroneSense has been instrumental in getting San Antonio PD's DFR program to this point and serves as the hub of their DFR operations using Ops Hub.
We really feel like the DroneSense Remote is more of an operational hub that not only allows us to integrate our manned and unmanned resources, but also allows us to integrate other leading technologies like counter UAS, drone and aircraft detection systems, real-time crime center.
DroneSense is great because they can implement and tie in all of these evolving and ever-changing technologies into DroneSense itself. And that allows us to remotely fly these drones.
We feel like that DroneSense is the vehicle or the platform to take us into the future with our DFR program.
Reach out to us, Repairland, San Antonio PD. We're all on board with the DFR program because we believe this is the future of policing and it's effective.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great overview of it, especially talking about Repairland and such in San Antonio. I think a great thing for us to dive in is, yes, challenges of implementing DFR and what you've experienced.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of challenges, and these are the top four for sure. The regulatory landscape.
Yeah, you took a deep breath before you said that. Yep. So
all right,
luckily
so
we have you here.
You ready for the next
Yeah.
hour?
All right.
Yeah, so the regulatory landscape is a big challenge. It's getting a lot better, which is fantastic. With the latest Reauthorization Act, there's a big portion of that is enabling beyond visual line of sight operations, not just for private sector, but also for public sector for us. So some of the regulatory challenges that I keep running into is there's not an accepted standard for detect and avoid for fully beyond visual line of sight. We're starting to get there. There is a standard that's out there for the ADSM standard, but the FAA hasn't fully bought off on it yet, which is part of the challenge that we have. That is one of the bigger issues that you'll run across is, well, I have a detect and avoid. There's a detect and avoid standard. Which one does the FAA want me to align with? We're getting to a better place for that. So I think that that'll get better here in the near future. And then with that will come more ability for industry to be able to create products for us that meet those requirements to make it easier for us to get beyond visual line of sight. What's also really nice is they are starting to become more and more efficient about having the ability to see with the ability to get first responder BVLOS with visual observers more streamlined as well. We're starting to see those waivers churn out faster and faster, which is fantastic for most simple first responder BVLOS templating. But with that comes some of the challenges. We've had a couple of the service centers have issues with some of the CONOPs that have gone through because there's not a standardized CONOP. People want to try to push the envelope a little bit too far. without the proper safety mitigations in place, or not writing enough into the ConOp to show that you can do what they're asking for safely. So there's going to be some challenges that we're going to see, but good news is it will be getting better. We have some great working relationships with some of the executives in the FAA. They're hearing our concerns, and they want to work with us, which is fantastic. So continue to work with the FAA. Just understand they got to do a job just like everybody else, and it will get a lot better from the regulatory perspective just because of the Reauthorization Act. We also have airspace restrictions. They're also one of the more challenging. Yeah, I'll get to your question there on Shaver on the 108 stuff. When it comes to airspace restrictions, there are definitely some limitations on there. You have your military operation areas, you have your restricted airspaces like in the freeze out there in DC. We also have Class Bravo airspaces, and then we got some air traffic control guys that just don't like drones. So going in and figuring out how you are going to work with those individuals can go a really long way. My best advice when it comes to airspace restrictions is to bring a box of donuts and go talk to those airport managers and UAS flight control, air traffic control managers out there, and get to know them. Let them know that you're not just trying to cowboy it up and fly these drones wherever you want, however you want. You want to make sure that they understand that what you're doing is primarily to safeguard human life. And that human life not only is just on the ground, but also in the air. And so that'll help a lot with some of the highly restrictive airspaces that you have. Like, for example, with Pearland, we have Class Bravo airspace to the surface for Hobby International Airport. One of the first things I did early on was I reached out to the UAS air traffic control manager and I told them what we were looking to do. What was awesome is almost all of those managers live in Pearland. So they were like, heck yeah, we love seeing our city do great things. So got lucky there. But again, like you got to go and you got to talk to those managers, and it goes a long way. Same with Air Force bases or military bases. Talk to the managers out there and figure out what they want, and then figure out how you can come to a common ground on building that out. Pearland has 2 airports and 2 heliports inside of our city limits, inside of our operational environment too. And so talking with them on what the airspace is going to look like so that you can deconflict airspace safely for all of those aircraft flying around. The last thing anybody wants is to put plastic on metal and end up taking down an aircraft, right? Limited flight time. This is something that is a philosophical approach to how to run DFR. There are agencies out there today that are doing active patrolling with their DFR program. There are agencies out there that like to fly out there and loiter. And then there's agencies that like to get out there, just provide that situational awareness and that real-time information and resource allocation to officers before they get there. And all of that has to do with battery management. So you're going to have a limited flight time based off of how you're going to fly your DFR program. What I recommend, and this is just a me decision, this isn't a rule by any stretch of the imagination, is I like to just get a drone out there, allow officers to get on scene, secure that scene, and then get that drone back in service so that you can go to the next call for service. That way you have the most battery life for the next call for service whenever you're ready to do that. But again, that's my recommendation. It's not the rule by any stretch of the imagination. But that limited flight time goes into also how far you fly in your aircraft, right? So with Pearland, I built those out to 2-mile rings. And the reason that I wanted to see that was there's going to be time to get on scene. And then there's going to be time that you need to hold that scene until officers get there to secure it. And I wanted to maximize that time. If you're flying 3+ miles out, especially if you start leapfrogging visual observers, that's only going to be less time that you'll have available to you to be able to stay on scene to provide that information. So take that into account as well. And then last but not least, privacy. And this is a huge one, guys. If y'all are clandestine with your programs, it's going to get killed eventually. Nobody likes to be spied on. We're all government here. So be transparent. Do not be clandestine. Have a public-facing dashboard. Have things to show that, hey, citizens of my city, not only am I being a good steward of a public safety using a drone program, but we're being transparent so that you can see that we're not spying on you. One of the things that Pearland did that I absolutely love is whenever they started writing their initial DFR policy, they actually invited the ACLU out. Wild, right? Like nobody would imagine doing that. But they actually did, and it was a fantastic conversation. Some of the things that they wanted was illegal with the current state laws that we have. So get with your ACLU, your local ACLU. It'll go a long way to be able to make sure that you're in a good place to make sure that your citizens are comfortable with it. And what you don't want is them writing bad press about your program, because then city council will get a hold of it, and then you'll start to lose that DFR program. So do things to make sure that you safeguard your program from privacy concerns. Make sure you have a list in your policy of flights that you will not fly for, right? That just don't make sense. That could open your program up to some issues. Shaver, you had asked about any insight into Part 108 and its effects on DFR ops. Part 108 was initially designed for vertiports, but in Part 108, they are starting to work on creating pathways for an advanced 107, which would be 108, to help enable beyond visual line of sight operations that are not public COA operations. So I think that there is a path there for DFR operations eventually. But I think that still needs to be sourced out, which we'll see that with the Reauthorization Act a little bit more as 108 grows. So make sure that you continue to watch those notices to rulemaking for Part 108, because it's going to be a good one to watch for sure. Great question.
Now, if only there was a solution to these challenges.
Yeah, if only. Let's go. There we go. When I want it to go to the next slide, it doesn't want to. When I don't want it to go to the next slide,
it's all good. We're going to make it through.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how DroneSense can help provide you with some of those solutions. So, we talked about how to get it. And that everything that we have talked about so far can apply for any of the solutions that are out there today. But one of the benefits of utilizing DroneSense is they listen to public safety. There are a lot of options that are out there, but what you'll find is a lot of those options are not specifically designed for public safety and drone as first responder operations, whereas DroneSense does create that for us. Our only vertical is public safety, and so it allows you to have a front row seat and a voice with us to be able to create the product that you want to make your jobs easier, safer, more efficient. So one of the things that you'll get by you being a DroneSense remote customer is BVLOS Waiver support. You get me and some other fantastic brains in the industry to help make sure that you are going to be successful in getting your waiver. Some of those heavy hitters, Stuart Lawless from overseas, he ran the London Metro Police drone program out there. Brilliant mind. He's an internationally recognized subject matter expert as well for drone as first responder operations, aviation safety. We got Cole Fox, who was fantastic in thinking through a bunch of really high technical challenges that you may experience and how to mitigate some of those, especially when it comes to software and hardware issues. And then with our partnership with Axon, we also got Vern Salee, who was the captain over the Chula Vista program for a few years. So we got some of the heaviest hitters in the game for drone as first responder to make sure that you're going to be supported properly for your beyond visual line of sight waiver. We also are fully customizable. We have the ability to integrate in with a ton of different systems. So for example, we brought in Iris Automation with Pearland's Beyond Visual Line of Sight program. That one of the detect and avoid solutions is the UAV Avionics Cassia G system. We said, hey, we're going to fly beyond visual line of sight. I need Cassia in here. Guess what's in DroneSense now? We have the Cassia system in there so that we can have that situational awareness in one nice system. We also prioritize systems that are that you would be utilizing for drone as first responder. So we have most of the DJI fleet that anybody would be using for drone as first responder. We have Dock 1, Dock 2 integrated in. We have the ability to bring in a ton of more systems. We have some really cool stuff on the horizon that I'm super excited to see come out. So be sure to watch on that. If there's an aircraft you would like to fly BVLOS and under DFR, let us know. And we'll start working with those manufacturers to see if we can get that into DroneSense sooner than later. We have a purpose-built call for service system as well. So whenever you launch your drone into the air and you want to go to that initial call for service, we have the ability to silo information specifically for that call for service. So when you go to the next one, it has its own notes. So it makes it very easy for you to be able to silo the information for each call for service. So it makes it easy on your back end to be able to do those light logs. You can fly autonomous flight to locations or manually. We have vertical geofencing in there for you as well. So if you wanted to have floating geofences, if you don't want to fly above 200 feet in some places or above 200 feet in others, you can build out those. If you want to build out a geofence around a tower, you can do that as well. We have video streaming and sharing. So what's fantastic is through being a DroneSense customer, you can leverage your DFR platforms into OpSub where you can have that situational awareness, and you can bring in all of your ground drones as well, all into one big situational awareness platform for your real-time crime centers, and so that they can make better decisions as well. Of course, drone fleet data management, going back to what we talked about with the waiver, right? You have to have stuff that tells the FAA, hey, we are tracking flights, we are tracking maintenance, we are tracking pilots, we are tracking training. All of that is built into our platform for you. So you can have it all in one place. You're not having to go, all right, where did I save that information? That's in a Google sheet. Dadgummit, the pilot didn't put the flight log in correctly, which I had to fight a lot back in the early days. So like it's all in one nice place. It's all automated. So it makes it super simple for you to be able to have a successful drone program. And then of course, tactical and emergency modes as well. It allows you to be able to fly these systems in many different type of environments for different type of responses. So whether you're flying for a tactical operation as a police officer, if you're flying for an emergency operation for as a firefighter, EMS, SAR, you can leverage our software from a platform perspective or from a drone as first responder perspective to make sure that you can fly your systems for any kind of response that you would deploy for, whether it's a platform, a in the field solution, or a drone as first responder solution. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, good stuff. Well, it's just, it really is just diving into this wealth of knowledge that you are, Brandon, and the fact that you are something that comes along with what the solution to this is of DroneSense. I mean, yeah, this is a no-brainer, everyone. But just amazing stuff here. We'll definitely add your email part of this too, maybe for correspondence at the end. But otherwise, this is a time to be opened up for questions for everyone at this moment. There is a little Q&A button at the bottom there of the screen. Please add some stuff in there if you'd like to jump in. I know we're definitely going over a little bit by 5 minutes, but we're here to answer. We got one live that I'm going to answer. Otherwise, we can always chat a little further, and we're always here to go in. But Logan Baker of the Railroad Commission of Texas has a good question here. So, Brandon, I'm going to read this one live to you. Our agency has a broad jurisdiction, 5 or 15 counties for my district. We respond to spills in creeks and rivers, but don't know where they could happen. In order to obtain a BVLOS waiver, we would need to plot out a certain launch points like what you showed, or would we be able to possibly get one without having that? 95% of the area I fly is out in the middle of nowhere, Class G airspace. Some of these spills go for miles down the river, so it'd benefit us to have a BVLOS waiver to fly further downstream without having more launch sites, often to document the spill path.
Awesome. That's a fantastic question. Large scale DFR is the future. And it's something that I have had a lot of conversations on. So this is a fantastic question.
And it's also great because it's like a broader industry too within this. So
right.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Logan, for asking the question. So one of the challenges that you'll have is, just as you mentioned, it's out in the middle of nowhere. You don't know where it's going to launch from. And one of the challenges with docks is you have to have power and internet out to those. So we have seen some solutions out there like Starlink to get internet, but my question would be, how are you going to run power to it? So that's going to be your issue. One thing that I would like to bring up, Logan, and you can throw this in the chat if you're familiar with it, is the special government interest process. If you've leveraged that, fantastic. If you haven't, for instance that you're mentioning here, in my opinion, this a beyond visual line of sight authorization through the special government interest process is probably more optimized for what you are trying to accomplish with this, because you don't know when, nor where, nor how far you're going to be launching these from. So by utilizing the special government interest process, you could make a phone call to Virginia and let them know, hey, I got a hazmat spill out here on this river. We believe that it could be 4, 5, 6 miles downrange. It's all classical off airspace. I need to be able to fly down there beyond visual line of sight to get an idea on where this is. a hazmat response in a waterway like that meets every definition that they have to be able to grant you an emergency COA for this response. And you can leverage really long distances with this, realistic distances, but really long distances beyond visual line of sight through a special government interest process. Logan, I would love to set up some a more in-depth time on your answer if you have any kind of further questions on that. Joe, I believe this QR code.
Great to bring Cole Fox in this one too. I mean, I think he has some knowledge there too as well. This would be great.
100%. Yeah, Cole is the guy for you, Logan. So Cole came from the Texas Railroad Commission. His expertise is hazmat response. So like going back to we got the A team, it doesn't get better than Cole. So yeah, let's absolutely scan that QR code, please, and thank you. Shoot me an email. I will loop Cole into that email as well. But it sounds like the SGI process is probably better suited for you, unless you can get some power and internet to those docks downrange. Then you absolutely could launch those immediately from wherever. But your biggest challenge will be getting stable power and internet down there.
Awesome. Thanks, Logan.
Great.
Well, good stuff, folks. Hey, thanks for staying a little bit later. I know we're going over almost 10 minutes later, but man, there's just so much to talk about and so much to cover here. So yes, again, please scan that QR code, or, almost magic video link, but yeah, scan that code, dive in. Brandon, if you want to share your screen, but we would love to dive in a little further with you guys and talk on all of that. But hey, just from all of us, thanks again for joining. Brandon, thanks again for diving in and just being the expert that you are. Otherwise, we're looking forward to seeing you on the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you all.